In 1974, a group of farmers digging a well in the Shaanxi province of China struck something unexpected a few meters below the surface. What they had found turned out to be one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Beneath the dry earth, thousands of life-sized clay soldiers were laid to rest, arranged in battle formation, each one with a distinct face. They had been down there for over 2,000 years, standing guard in the dark, waiting. This is the Terracotta Army, the funerary monument of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China and one of the most recent and important archaeological findings. In Civilization VI, the Terracotta Army provides the following bonuses. +2 Great General points per turn, all current units gain a promotion level, and all archaeologists may enter foreign territory without open borders. So, it is pretty obvious that this is a militaristic focused wandering game, but to better understand why these effects were attributed to it, we can begin by examining who Qin Shi Huang was and why he felt the need to bring an entire army with him into the afterlife. Qin Shi Huang, initially known as Yingzheng, became king of the state of Qin at the age of 13 in 246 BC. China at the time was a world of competing kingdoms, continually at war with each other in what historians call the Warring States period. Yingzheng spent the first decades of his reign methodically conquering each of them one by one, until by 221 BC he had unified all of China under his authoritarian rule. He then declared himself Qin Shi Huang, meaning First Emperor of Qin, an ambitious title for the then 29-year-old. Qin Shi Huang's reign is probably one of the most consequential of all of China's history. He standardized weights, measures, and writing across the empire while laying down the foundations of what would become the Great Wall. He also built a vast network of roads and canals, and he centralized power in a way that would shape Chinese governance for centuries. However, Qin Shi Huang was also a very authoritarian and ruthless ruler, while being obsessed with the concept of immortality. He sent multiple expeditions to search for the elixir of eternal life, most of which never returned, obviously fearing the consequences of their failure. Huang's paranoia was not entirely unfounded for sure, having survived multiple assassination attempts. His life and legacy is honestly just too long for this video, so I think this is a nice place to start focusing on the wonder. Huang began construction of his tomb almost immediately after becoming king, a project that would consume the labor of hundreds of thousands of workers for decades. The tomb complex was truly enormous. The burial mound itself has never been fully excavated, and ancient sources describe it as containing rivers of mercury, crossbow traps, and a miniature model of the empire he had built. The Terracotta Army, however, is not inside the tomb, but in the pits surrounding it, stationed almost like a protective force for the emperor in the afterlife. Over 8,000 clay soldiers have been identified so far, each with their own unique features, along with cavalry, chariots, acrobats, musicians, and bronze birds. The army is organized with the same structure as the actual Qin military force, with everyone arranged in proper formation. Civilization VI, for its part, makes the Terracotta Army provide extra great general points, the reasoning for which should be pretty clear from the brief history I went over before. Qin's Wars of Unification was a testament to Qin Shi Huang's abilities as a ruler and a commander. In just 9 years, his armies were able to conquer all 6 of the states remaining in China, one by one. If great general points in Civ VI represent the accumulation of military leadership and strategic expertise, then I can't think of a more appropriate bonus to be given for the army that protected the tomb of one of China's most important conquerors. As for the similarly militaristic and powerful effect of the wonder providing a free promotion to all units, we can again look towards the Qin's military accomplishments. I think this bonus represents the military system that Qin Shi Huang inherited and perfected. The Qin army was exceptionally well organized, using standardized weapons and carefully managed logistics for the time period. Most importantly to the effect we're examining, Qin rewarded military success through a merit-based system that allowed soldiers and officers to advance according to their achievements rather than their noble birth. Even if it's not an exact one-to-one comparison, I like to think of the promotion effect that the wonder provides as being a small hint towards that system of military organization. It just makes sense to me. Now, the last of the effects is by far the most unique and interesting one, and is totally different than the rest. How does it make any sense at all for the Terracotta Army to allow your archaeologists to enter foreign terrain without permission? It really comes out of nowhere. Well, I think a unique effect such as this deserves some deeper digging. The Terracotta Army was discovered by accident in 1974 by a group of Chinese farmers who were digging in the area. So tying the effect to the archaeological discovery of the wonder doesn't really make sense to me. Instead, I think the most interesting explanation comes from looking at what the Terracotta Army has become in the decades since its discovery. The exhibition history of the Terracotta Army is actually quite extensive. Since the first international showing at the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne in 1982, the figures have travelled to museums across the world. The British Museum's first Emperor exhibition in 2007 became the museum's most successful year on record, drawing more visitors than any other show since the Tutankhamun exhibition in 1972. Tickets sold out so fast that the museum extended its opening hours until midnight, and crowds on Chinese New Year were so intense that the gates had to be shut. The Terracotta Army is one of the most unique historical artifacts, and China has definitely made sure to display its importance to the whole world. In that sense, I like to think of the archaeologist-related bonus as a hint towards that immense international outreach that the Terracotta Army managed to have through its many popular exhibitions. The open borders being able to be ignored is still a bit weird though, which leads me to another possible but darker explanation. This one is based on the Century of Humiliation, a term that is used for the period between roughly 1831 and 1941, during which China lost significant sovereignty over its territory and its cultural heritage to foreign powers, most notoriously exemplified by the burning and looting of the old Summer Palace. Western and Japanese expeditions removed enormous quantities of Chinese artifacts during that period, often under agreements that China had little real power to refuse. Through that lens, a mechanic that allows your scholars to enter foreign lands and extract cultural artifacts without permission takes on a pretty different character. I am not really sure that the developers had this in mind when making the wonder though, especially since it would be a bit ironic to provide the effect to a Chinese wonder. The wonder requires the construction technology. Constructing the mausoleum was definitely an extraordinary engineering effort. According to historian Sima Chun, 700,000 people were conscripted to work for the construction of the mausoleum complex. Massive underground chambers were excavated and filled with thousands of clay warriors made in enormous kilns, each equipped with actual weapons. Craftsmen were ordered to construct crossbow traps, and mercury was poured to resemble flowing rivers under moonlight. The mausoleum was basically an underground city on a massive scale, and the Terracotta Army was stationed right beside it for its protection. It's needless to say that even if Sima Chun's descriptions are not that accurate, none of this could exist without a pretty advanced understanding of construction and engineering. The wonder must be built on grassland or plains adjacent to an encampment with a barracks or stable. I was debating whether this restriction deserved a place in the redundant building requirement wall of shame, but I think ultimately it doesn't, since the Terracotta Army was never really a military installation in the first place. The grassland or plains requirement is a reasonable representation of the landscape around the actual site in Shaanxi province, which sits in the Wei River Valley, a fertile agricultural plain. However, the encampment restriction is straight up historical, since the actual site was a mausoleum. It does make great thematic sense however, so I can't be mad about it.
There were 7 wonders in the world, and the discovery of the Terracotta Army, we may say, is the 8th miracle of the world.
The in-game quote comes from Jacques Chirac, the former president of France, who visited the Museum of Terracotta Warriors in 1978 and was obviously awed by it. Chirac was actually the very first foreign dignitary to view the Terracotta Army, but many more leaders of states would follow. Describing the Terracotta Army as the 8th wonder of the world is a sentiment that many people have expressed about the site, and I can really understand why that is. The sheer scale of it, paired with how well it was preserved for thousands of years, really makes its discovery one of the most important ones in all of history. The Terracotta Army remained sealed and largely intact for over 2,000 years, partly because the tomb complex was never successfully looted at scale, and partly because its location was not widely known until the 1974 discovery. Excavations have been ongoing ever since, and the site is still not fully explored. The main burial mound of Qin Shi Huang himself has not been excavated, with archaeologists fearing that modern excavation techniques could irreversibly damage whatever survives inside. So there is still a lot to learn about this ancient wonder. Modern sensing technology has confirmed the presence of remarkable features beneath the mound, including unusual high concentrations of mercury, that appear to confirm at least some of Sima Qian's extraordinary descriptions of mercury rivers inside the tomb. I really like the Terracotta's army design in Civ VI. It doesn't get everything perfect, but it follows a clear theme, and the bonus to archaeologists makes it feel very unique when looking at it through a historical lens. The wonder itself is incredibly evocative, and I think that the developers did a very good job at translating this into gameplay, while also leaning into its actual history in some very satisfying ways. The promotions being tied to the actual military merit system, for example, is very cool. For a wonder that has only been known to the wider world for 50 or so years, it has been given a very nice and thoughtful interpretation in-game.